Okay, it's 11:15, everybody. So I'd just like to welcome you to this session on day one of CSEdX 2024, and this stream is 2.1 on student success. My name is Lou Pemberton, and I'm going to be facilitating this session for you. Just to be aware that this session is going to be recorded, and I'll ask Lachlan to turn that on now. Also request participants to turn off their microphones until the discussion component. We have a bit of an interesting session this morning. We have a roundtable followed by a presentation. So just keep in mind that there won't be an additional Q&A session for the roundtable session, but we will have one for the presentation later on. Now, just before we move on to the presentations, I would like to pay my respects to First Nations elders past, present, and emerging across the many lands where Charles Sturt campuses, students, and staff are located. And in particular, I acknowledge the Wiradjuri, Ngunnawal, Gundagara, and Biripi peoples. And I also pay my respects to any First Nations colleagues in this session today. I would like just now to introduce very briefly what is going to happen this morning. We have two fascinating presentations. The first in the format of a roundtable where we have Buck Reid, and the title of his presentation will be Establishing Ethical Boundaries for AI Use in Supervision of Honours and HDR Students. And this will then be followed by Lorraine Rose, with another really sort of provocative presentation, since we've just come out of that session, about AI for all, bridging the digital divide with OER, and we'll get on to that one later on. But now I would just like to invite Buck to share your screen, and we will get on to your round table.
Great, thank you very much, Louise. I'll just, there we are. Just get my screen shared here. So as Louise mentioned, I'm going to be talking about the ethics of using AI in the supervision of honours and HDR students. I put this together with Associate Professor Sonia Maria, who unfortunately can't be here today. These are the Muppets versions of Sonia and myself. Since we discovered AI, one of the great things we discovered about it is the ability to generate images. So you will see, and this has become a bit of a theme in our presentations, a whole range of Muppet AI generated images to support our presentation. So just a quick bit of background. What is AI? Some of you may have used AI before or might be using AI regularly. And AI is a very broad term to essentially describe the capability of computers to do things that humans used to do, such as recognizing speech, finding patterns in things, making decisions. There's a whole range of things that have AI embedded in it now. Twitter has AI embedded, Facebook, Grammarly. There's a whole range of government services that are AI based. There's AI everywhere. And increasingly, we're starting to use AI in the academic and research settings. And AI is quite a broad term. It covers things like machine learning, deep learning, language processing, but it's essentially about taking information and finding our algorithms for computers to process decisions and create things. And that is what we're specifically talking when we talk about generative AI. So this is where we're using AI to create some type of output, whether that's text or images, like our friend the Shakespearean robot here. And basically, the way that works is we give the AI a series of prompts or a series of instructions. that tell it what we want it to do, and it produces something for us. And we're increasingly discovering in research we can use that for things like summarizing papers, for rewriting text, for generating ideas, for getting a group of ideas and putting them together into a list. So there's a whole range of things that we can do with AI in the research space. So as this is becoming a more common occurrence, that raises a range of questions for us in the research and HDR supervision space. Not the least of which is the fact that often our PhD students are younger and more tech savvy than we are, and will be very interested in using these tools. And if they're not, what's our role in bringing them to these tools, but also putting boundaries around the way that these tools are used. So as we start seeing these tools being used more and more, like where do we set the lines about this is an appropriate use of a tool, this is not an appropriate use of the tool? When does something stop being the creative output of the student itself and become primarily the creative output of the AI? Because obviously our intention with HDR and honors students is that they produce original research, which is their intellectual creative output. But there is certainly a lot of scope to be using AI as a tool to help them to do that, to work much more smartly, rather than a lot of the older processes that some of us may have encountered with our HDR studies. So we're going to look at 4 key concepts within this, and I would invite people to jump into the chat as we go through each one, or share your, turn on your cameras and speak, because being a roundtable, it's really important that, we have an open discussion about this and bring up queries people have or problems they're having, but also ideas and things that people have found. Because I use the term AI expert in a rather guarded sense, in that even though Sonia and I have been working with AI for a little while now, we're really more just a little bit ahead of everyone else than anything that I would term an AI expert. Kind of curious amateurs is probably more appropriate. So we are in a space where we're all learning about AI all the time. No one's really a mega expert in the use in AI in research yet. So we all have a lot to contribute to each other's knowledge, because there are so many tools and platforms around and uses of AI that often people are discovering things just kind of randomly. So creating that community of practice is really important. So the 4 areas that we'll have a look at are ethics, the implications for regional students, documentation standards, and current practices. Oops, there we are. So just to kind of get the discussion started, and I'll just open up the chat window so I can see what people are saying. What do you think ethical use of AI looks like? Where do people draw lines in the sand around, those boundaries of when something stops becoming intellectual property of the student? Is it just the core ideas that should come from the student? Is it all the text? Is it most of the text, etc.? And then how do we make sure that we're using the tools to enhance the student's experience rather than just create shortcuts or do work for them? And again, this isn't a dichotomy. There are certainly ways that AI assists people to make them work a lot more efficiently, and there are ways that AI can do things for them. So just having a look at the chat here. I'll open up a bit bigger so I can read it. Yeah, so I mean, we teach them a lot about ethics in general with their HDR studies. And really AI is no different for any other tool that they use. So there's a lot about here about disclosure. Sorry, I'm just reading a few of these. Okay, so there's some strong views in the chat on AI, and I do think that it is tricky because we are in this position where a lot of us have come through university and HDR studies with a particular set of standards, and AI has kind of thrown all of that on its head, and we're forced with a situation where the use of AI is probably inevitable. So it's more about kind of corralling it within ethical boundaries than probably not using it at all, because the systems we have for detecting it are not very robust. So in a sense, we need to build an ethical framework where people sort of self-police their use of AI. And Stuart makes that point that it probably people's ethical use of AI is embedded in their general ethical approach to research. But it does create that dilemma, as was mentioned in one of the previous comments, that if a student say was producing an original art piece and went off and got some other artist to make it and then presented it as their work, that would clearly be inappropriate and misconduct. So if they asked the computer to do it, is that misconduct? In that case, it probably would be. But how much can the AI help? How much can the AI give them ideas? How much can the AI check their work? I would imagine at the moment that the quality of AI, like I do a lot of AI generated images, and they're pretty rough at this stage. But given that 3 years ago you couldn't do it at all, we do need to keep in mind that will we have a situation with AI where it can produce extremely high quality creative outputs in the not too distant future? Yeah, so the comments that I'm seeing, and I appreciate everyone who's putting it in here. Then if we don't kind of embed that ethical premise within people's general ethical approach to research, then they're not going to have kind of a philosophical grounding. And I often find that for most people, if they understand that the pride of creating a work, whether it's text or visual art or some other creative output, is rooted in their own creativity, then hopefully that will inspire them to be more genuine about what they create. All right. In the interest of time, I'm going to pop on to our next topic. So one of the challenges that we have is with rural and isolated students. And we can look at AI as something that we can potentially use to support the students because they are isolated and they have access to less resources. But also that being more isolated, then there's often less oversight of them. So does anyone have any thoughts about how we could use AI as a positive tool for our more remote students or students that are isolated for some reason? I did my PhD working at a different university to the one I was in, so I didn't have the benefit of being in a lab with a bunch of other full-time HDR students. And that's certainly the case of people who are geographically isolated from the universities. And certainly there is a lot of value in having a kind of physical community of practice around you when you're doing that type of HDR work. And certainly in paramedicine, where I teach, quite a lot of our HDR students, whether they're PhD or masters or honors, are paramedics who are off in some area in the back of New South Wales somewhere where they have quite a bit of time and thought this would be a great time to do a higher degree by research. But they're nowhere near the campus. So any thoughts about either enablers or challenges or applications of AI for our regional students?
If I may, Buck, thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Sure.
I'm Sam Bowker, the Sub-Dean in Graduate Studies for Faculty of Arts and Education, also an art historian. Now, I've been in the chat actively for a few minutes now, but regarding this issue of regional and isolated students, the biggest concern I have for this student demographic as a broad and important student demographic is that they'll be hearing about AI as something that it is not from sources outside the university. I'm concerned about the evangelism of tech bros, so to speak, who call an AI a system that solves problems, a quick fix solution. And the interactions that these students may have beyond the university with AI from non-critical sources could lead them to perceive AI as a more useful thing than it actually is. So my concern here is really to ensure that our regional and isolated students are aware of the points at which AIs break and become unreliable. This is the biggest thing that I teach in VPA 107, where we introduce that the AI systems do certain things. We show them how to use them. We show them why they work the way they do. And then we start showing them the cost, including the tells that help us to recognize what an AI-generated text looks like and feels like from different sources, and the kinds of work an AI can do well, but more importantly, the points where the machine breaks. I think this is the biggest thing we can show our regional isolated students. End sermon. Over to you.
No, that's an excellent point. And we do need to keep in mind that there is a lot of information around AI of varying levels of ethical and factual status, which people can be exposed to. And it is important that they get really good quality information from us as academic supervisors, because there are places where, I'm sure you can do some TikTok tutorial in 30 seconds about how to make a Rembrandt with ChatGPT.
It's absolutely impossible, and it's disgusting that people even try. So I have very direct opinions about this, which is coming from my work as an art historian, where the use of image creation is just, I frankly have no words for it. So yeah, but basically don't let them listen to the tech bros who will encourage them to use AIs in ways that are fundamentally manipulative. So that's the key. And Riley has a comment as well, please.
Oh, thanks, Sam and Buck. I totally agree with Sam. And I was going to raise the unethical and immoral nature of AI and art, but that seems to Sam seems to have covered that. But I agree that I was wondering if one strategy is the subject that Sam teaches sort of gets spread and educated across the whole university for honours students, HDR students, for staff, because to me that's the approach that I wanted to take to this, like that, really pulling it apart and showing the weaknesses of AI and also showing the problems of mainstream AI and advertisement that young people are faced with, like all the ads that are saying, by a press of a button you can be kinder in an email, instead of teaching students teaching us how to write kind emails. And I'm just worried about all the advertisement of you turn up unprepared to a presentation and you can duck outside and look up ChatGPT, and then it's promoting you don't have to be prepared, and all that negativity in mainstream that students have told me they're bombarded with. Because I had, just to put it out there, I had 75 students enrolled in my second year, second session subject, and I suspected 40, so over 50% of generative AI use, and most of them did go to misconduct. So then it was being used obviously in an unethical way in undergrad. So I'm really concerned about that and wondering if that education can be, promoted in the university, and what you think of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important for us to give people good quality information and also set AI within a context where people understand that, it may seem like a short-term solution to a problem, but if they're trying to produce quality academic work, or really original work, they can produce a thing, and that's fine, but is that a thing they're really going to be proud of? And I mean, if they are a student who just wants to tick some boxes and get a degree, then they may be more inclined to that. I would hope that if somebody goes into an HDR program, they would actually want to be kind of genuinely intellectually engaged in the process. And I think showing them all of the ways that AI can be useful in a kind of logistical sense, but also all of the drawbacks it has in terms of a creative and ethical sense. Yeah. Michael.
Look,
Oh, sorry.
I want to just share my experience with what my son's doing now. He's a first year university student. And so he's not doing this sort of thing yet, but he's engaging with AI outside of his assessment. So he's doing, as students do, did his own little research project where he got generative AI to help him write some computer code, which he didn't accept the first version because he tried and it fails, but he worked hard at that iterative process. But then he goes, oh, maybe I want to write a paper about this one day. So I said, so I don't forget, I'll get generative AI to see if I can generate the methods section. So it was a genetics assignment. So genetics sort of project he had been doing. So he got it to write first draft, and he said he spent 4 hours going back lots of times to edit it until it finally was actually what it actually was describing what he did. So not for assessment. I mean, maybe he writes a paper out of it if he's really, really keen. I don't know, but I think, but it was an interesting exercise is to actually try some things out, as I think Sam was saying, is that sometimes that he probably was quicker just to have written it himself, to be honest, in that case. Yeah. But not, I mean, so because he wanted it a certain way, but it is worthwhile looking at what things can be done. Like he had he had to describe the path that he was doing, right? So it's actual project, right? In that sort of regard. So people will try these things. What are the bounds that are useful? I think sometimes it's useful to try some things out. Like you can get it to generate a presentation, someone had referred before. I did that for my technical math subject, and it doesn't understand the technical part. Like, does some lovely graphics, but it doesn't understand some of the key technical parts. So understanding the limitations, which it's easy just to show people, I think, some of these things. And as you get to a HDR or honours, that technical stuff starts being super important, but doesn't matter. I mean, things like grammar checking and some of that AI things is really helpful for our students. Like a lot of the honours students that I would get in my school and HDR are often migrants, not for English as a second language, and that sort of editorial support, which they're in the past they've often paid for, right? They've had to pay for that. Would be a useful tool, and acknowledge it, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Riley, you had a
question.
question.
Do you want to comment first? Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Sure.
Oh
no,
okay. Sorry, I didn't know.
Yeah, no, I will just quickly respond to Michael. But yeah, look, I think absolutely, we really need to be clear about the pros and cons. And you're right, like for every one of these cute photos that I made with Copilot, some of them I put the prompt in and Copilot gave it to me, and then sometimes it's like 27 iterations later after I've gone, no, I don't want the robot in front of the window, I want it behind the window. And I almost think I'd be better off just getting out a set of crayons and drawing stick figures for you. So anyway, Riley.
Yeah, I agree. Going back to, well, not basics, but what Michael pointed out, to me, what is needed for our students, in particular international students, English and second language, is we just need more academic skills support services and staff across our university, across the board. And then we'll develop those, you know, critical reading, writing, thinking, ethical principles and skills that we all know are part of being, you know, a university and being academics. They will then develop those skills. So then they will, if they're going to use AI, they will use it with that ethical and critical, not, you know, learning and knowledge. So to me, I'm nervous that we've gone too full steam ahead. Isn't this wonderful? Let's all use it. And then we get the case where the students, you know, aren't aware of the ethical. Now I know in higher in honours and PhD, we would hope that they would have those critical thinking and ethical principles to use it. But I also agree with the point that sometimes, yes, it can take longer using it, but also even if not avoiding AI, but even not using AI for those technical things and doing those tiny little technical processes that we all wish we didn't have to do, sometimes that's where the learning, and a term I've heard, marinating your thoughts, that kind of stuff when you're doing a PhD and honours happens while you're doing those boring things. Sometimes you're clicking buttons and doing all that stuff that people say, I'll just get AI to do it. I'm like, well, actually, that gives me a break from maybe the heavy thinking stuff. But while I'm doing that mechanical stuff myself, I'm learning how to do it. For one, I'm not getting an AI to do it for me. And I'm thinking about it. I don't know. I just think that, to me, removing all that quick and boring stuff actually is detrimental, because I think we need that, and it complements the whole process of a PhD in honours. But that's me. I don't know if that makes sense.
No worries. I know we're getting close to time for this, so I might. We have been talking quite a lot about our current practices, so I'll just kind of steam through to the end, because I feel like we could have probably done this as a roundtable that went for the entire day and filled it up with content. So I guess the last thought that I have, and we can have a few comments before we finish, is I always think of AI as a talented but clueless research assistant who can do things for you, but really needs a lot of direction and a lot of context. And I actually heard this quote from someone else the other day that said, imagine AI as your talented but clueless research assistant who is also casually racist and misogynistic. And that's because all of this relies on the training data that it gets, which is something that we don't have a lot of control over. And that's the thing I really hammer home with people. So, you know, if we go back to my previous slide, which is, you know, two academics sitting with an HDR student, I have to be very specific in my prompts about, you know, the gender and age and things of those images, because if you just go into, you know, ChatGPT or Copilot and say, give me an image of a university professor, it will always be a 60-year-old man wearing a tweed jacket and a bow tie, because the training data suggests that, you know, 60-year-old men are university professors, because it must be looking at, you know, movies from the 1960s or something as its reference point. So it is really important that we are very clear with people about those challenges that come from AI, but also the utility of it. Does anyone have any last comments before we finish up? Because I'm mindful that we have another speaker coming after us.
We have a few minutes, Buck, because
Okay.
we only have 2 presentations.
Okay, excellent. So just on that note, we're all probably at various levels of our AI usage, and some of us are very new to it, and some of us have been dabbling around with it, like myself, for a while, and some of us have probably incorporated it quite a lot. Is anyone doing anything interesting with AI and their HDR students, either in terms of the way that you introduce it to them, or the way you talk about the boundaries and limitations, or basically I feel like we need to be like an AI coach now for our HDR students, taking into account, Sam's comments about the fact that, they spend time with us, but they've also got a million tech bros telling them that AI can sell them Bitcoin and do all sorts of stuff for them.
If I may, thank you
Yeah.
very much for this wonderful conversation and the commentary in the chat. I just added a little comment there about the AI coach model, which I can kind of see how we get to that point, but I see it as a slight shift from coach to Virgil. And here I'm thinking about Dante's Divine Comedy and the Inferno, where Virgil is a person present in that space where Dante's a visitor and navigating through it, not trying to help, but rather introducing you to all these waylaid souls along the way and why they're suffering. And I feel that the Dante Virgil analogy is better than coach, because coach implies we want people to use it and know how to use it. Virgil implies we want people to know why it's unreliable and what we have to offer instead. So that's what I wanted to say there. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. And I do think that, we ourselves as academics will do something with AI and find it really handy. And so it becomes attractive to us as well. And we also need to have a bit of metacognition and remind ourselves that, AI is a tool to do certain types of things to create efficiencies. But, our value as academics comes from our independent thought and our human creativity, which is not something that AI can do. And it's also in our best interest to not give anyone the idea that you can just replace all the academics with some AI generated content, because we are much more than just the content we deliver. There's all sorts of context and things that that we provide through our lived experience in whatever our discipline area is. AI can't, I teach in paramedicine, and AI can tell you clinical things, but it can't express to you the emotions of having worked as a paramedic, or, critical thinking experiences you've had, or actual real stories of things that have happened. The same way it can't convey, it can tell you the elements of, Da Vinci's work, but it can't tell you the kind of visceral experience of what an art historian can tell you about how that person lived and worked and the political influences on them and things like that, expressed in a way that comes from someone who has kind of an emotional link to that discipline area. So I hope that's been helpful for everyone. The chat's been going off so quickly. I apologize, I haven't been able to read that fast. Perhaps I should have gotten AI to have curated it for me.
Thank you very much, Buck. I think you'll have a fascinating read later on of all of those fabulous points that were made in the chat. We will now move on and to our second presentation, and I will just bring it up here. So I'd like to invite Lorraine Rose, with another presentation about AI. This time it's AI for all, bridging the digital divide with OER. So welcome, Lorraine, and I will get you to invite you to share your presentation.
Thank you. I'll just share my screen. Okay, so hopefully everyone can see my PowerPoint slide. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to AI for All, Bridging the Digital Divide with OER, where I'm going to chat to you about Charles Sturt Library's development of an AI literacy open educational resource. So based on this last conversation, hopefully this is an example of how the library can help and some of the resources we're developing to help students with AI literacy. So my name is Lorraine Rose, and I'm a faculty librarian at the Port Macquarie campus on beautiful Biripi country. As we all know, Charles Sturt University is a regional university with campuses throughout New South Wales and has a large cohort of online students. Given the unique structure of our university, the library strives to provide accessible, equitable, flexible learning resources that support students no matter where they're located. And many of our students have full-time jobs and study at night. Others live in rural areas with not the best internet, which are all things we need to consider. And it means that resources need to be accessible to them and at their point of need. With the rapid emergence of Gen AI in 2023, we faced increasing requests from academics seeking guidance on Gen AI use for their students. And we identified a few key needs. So academics required AI literacy resources for their students, which I think was mentioned in the conversation earlier. Students needed direction on using AI tools responsibly in their studies. And this was in particular where they were asked to use Gen AI in an assessment task. And we also found that researchers required guidance on incorporating Gen AI into their work. So our solution was to produce an AI literacy resource. It presented an opportunity for our library to take the lead in supporting the university community by developing this AI literacy resource as an open educational resource, or OER. So open educational resources are teaching, learning, and research materials that are freely available for anyone to use, copy, adopt, and share. And the benefits of OERs are numerous, and they're very well documented. So they enhance student learning. They provide equal access to educational resources with simultaneous use regardless of the location. There's no cost for students. They have flexibility to tailor content to meet the needs of our students. And in particular, we can adapt the content to assist with assessments. They're easily updated, so we can keep them current, which was especially important considering the rapid advances of Gen AI. So the library developed using AI tools at university, which is an open educational resource using the Pressbooks platform. And it was designed to provide comprehensive information for students and researchers about AI tools and their applications, particularly how you can use them in study and research. We wanted to address the ethical considerations and responsible use, including understanding bias and privacy. And we wanted to support academics in integrating Gen AI use into their curriculum by creating resources specifically helping students to complete assessment tasks. The resource was built around specific categories, and some of the main points that we covered were examples of how AI tools can be used in study and research. So everything from brainstorming to creating flashcards so that you could study for your exams. We also went into understanding and detecting AI bias and algorithmic literacy. We looked at how to critically evaluate the different AI tools, but also critically evaluate the content that was created. We have some in-depth information on understanding effective prompt engineering, learning how to document and acknowledge the use of AI tools. And this was especially important when students were asked to use AI tools in an assessment task. They needed to know how to acknowledge that or cite them. We also have details on publishing, grant writing, and copyright, so focusing on researchers' use as well. Now, the implementation process began with choosing Pressbooks, which is an online software which creates digital books and open educational resources. And we chose Pressbooks for a number of reasons. One, it integrated with Brightspace, so we can embed the content in Brightspace. It supported interactive H5P elements, and we used many of these elements, including flashcards, memory games, branching scenarios, and one in particular that I love is the Cornell notes. These were really useful when assisting students. So an example is that one of the assessment tasks that students had to complete was to record the AI tools they used and then the prompt that they used in those AI tools, and then they had to evaluate the content created using that prompt. And we created the Cornell notes in H5P, and this was a really good way they could keep records of the tool and the prompt and the evaluation. And then this was their way they could then present their results. Pressbooks also allows direct linking to specific chapters and sections, which was really important when we used the resource in our AI literacy classes and wanted to point students, for example, straight to the Cornell Notes section. It also, Pressbooks enabled continuous updates as AI technology evolves. It allowed adaptation or cloning, and we did adapt it into some digital literacy modules. It allowed downloads for offline use, so really important for those students who don't have good internet access. It doesn't support all the interactive elements, but at least the content was all readable for offline use. Pressbooks was a new subscription for the library, so it was a really good opportunity for our librarians to learn the application, and it also meant that we had a resource to showcase and promote to others so that they could then see the value of an OER. So once Pressbooks had been chosen, our development process involved collaborating with the academics, particularly for those academics we were working with where they had Gen AI in their assessment tasks. We did an environmental scan of existing resources, and there wasn't a lot out there at that time. This is about this time last year. We then developed the content and created interactive elements to encourage active learning, and the resource was reviewed by academics and library staff before launch. Since publishing in February 2024, it has had over 17,000 unique visitors, over 5,000 page views. It's been successfully integrated into coursework and adapted, as I mentioned earlier, into digital literacy modules. And we've only just found this out, but it's been cloned once. So we don't know who clones a book, but this is the advantage of OERs, that somebody can come along and reuse your content. So somebody has reused this content and adapted it to their needs. We've had positive feedback from students and staff. We're collecting feedback via Microsoft Forms and through the subject experience surveys where the book was used in subjects. We've found that the resource has proven particularly useful for supporting specific assessment tasks and AI literacy training in general. Now, as I mentioned, the book was adapted into a digital literacy module as well. So this slide reflects the combined data from views from both of these OERs. So we've almost had 12,000 page views. What I find interesting here is that it's had 1,000 downloads. So 1,000 people have downloaded these to use offline. And the digital literacy module has been cloned twice as well. So there's been 3 clones of these OERs all up. We've had challenges, as with any project along the way. Updating was always going to be a challenge with the changing world of AI. Learning the Pressbooks platform, it was brand new, so we had to learn how to create and edit that platform right at the beginning. And then promotion is tricky because not all subjects were allowed to use Gen AI, so it's really only been selectively used in subjects where Gen AI was allowed to be used. And then we've got some future developments. So we're expanding and improving the resource by, well, we're constantly regularly reviewing and updating the content based on feedback from academics and students. And we're updating for any new AI literacy classes that we're asked to present. We're also continuously updating content throughout the year to reflect AI advancements. That's been a real challenge, as I mentioned. The AI tools change, become paid, or change a name, Claude 2 to Claude 3, so that needs to be updated. We're looking at developing new chapters on incorporating AI in teaching and learning, and it's just about to go through a major review. And we'll be further embedding it in subjects where required. And we're also using it for all our AI literacy training. So that brings me to the end of my presentation, and I'm looking forward to any questions or comments or further ideas on how we can keep enhancing this resource. And if you do want to know more about OERs, take a look at our OER library guide, and I'll pop the slides into the chat now, and there's a link in the slides to access that library guide with the library.
Thank you very much, Lorraine. You stuck to the time, which was fantastic. I would now just like to open this session just for questions, if anybody has one. I'm actually having some technical difficulties here myself, where my Zoom screen keeps going blank. So I'm having trouble accessing the chat. So I might get somebody to turn on their microphone and ask the question in person.
I've got a question for Lorraine, if I can. I'll jump in at this point. I'm just interested in, I guess, the agency around use of the modules. They're completely sort of autonomous, looks like. They're not being policed in any way, or it's up to the students to choose to do them and the academics to choose to teach to them or mention what's in there or incorporate them in their own delivery. Is that right?
Correct, yes. So the modules are available on our website, and then the book is separate as well. It's findable through Primo Search. It's available in our LibGuides as well. When we're delivering the AI literacy classes, it's things that we promote because but that's been how we've promoted it through the actual classes, because nothing's compulsory, and as I mentioned, not all subjects are allowed to use Gen AI, so it's only really at this stage being used in subjects where Gen AI is being used for an assessment task.
Right, and if I can just piggyback on that, I suppose, given that you have sort of faculty-facing sort of liaisons within the library, I'm assuming is still the approach taken. Do you provide sort of a suggested or potential strategy for incorporating them, or is it just broadly these are what we have available? You know, what you do what you want with them.
At this stage, these are available, but we've also got other AI literacy resources now available in what were called our InfoQuest modules, and these can be all put into Brightspace sites. They, as well as educating students about AI, they also go through all the basics of the library, how to use Primo Search, how to access the databases. So they're a great sort of basic all-round information literacy and digital literacy and AI literacy all rolled into one. So they would be great. We'd love to see those out there more, but again, it's up to the faculty to put those into the subjects that they want them in.
Right, thank you for that. Sounds great.
Thank you, Lorraine. Would anybody else like to ask Lorraine a question? Again, I can't seem to access my screen, so I'm just kind of talking into a black hole here.
Hi, Louise. It's Riley.
Hi, Riley.
Hi. But I think Sam was before me. You had questions in the chat above me, Sam. If you want.
No, I'm happy for thank you very much, Riley, for thinking of that. But truly, I'm happy for the chat questions to be their own conversation. I'd like to have you hand you the floor now. Thank you.
Okay, well, it's kind of, there was two parts. One question was about choice and if students have a choice not to use AI, but that was one question. But the other question I just wanted to ask was about copyright. I'm aware that and thanks, Jane, for that. I'm aware that there's a chapter on AI and copyright. I guess my concern is, and my question is this front and center, and are students aware of when they're copyright breaching and how's that taught? Because unfortunately I've come across students showing me how they're using it when I was in the investigation process of academic misconduct, when they weren't allowed to use it, and they were very open and honest and showed me how they used it. I went, oh my gosh, you're breaching copyright. So and then that led me to concern about how students are putting copyrighted material into ChatGPT, like a PDF of a copyrighted journal article. Sometimes it was my own research. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then it was spitting out a summary. And I said, oh, are you aware that that's a breach of copyright? And they're like, no. And then they have to report. And obviously we don't want to be in a position where we're reporting students and staff for breaching copyright. So, and I know it's not your responsibility, Lorraine, it's a whole university approach. And I've been talking to Mark Bassett, who's in the DVCA's office, and he said there's more we need to do. I spoke to him after another meeting. So I'm just wondering from your perspective, what education's out there, and so just about copyright, how it's being taught, or if you wanted to speak to that.
Well, I think I think our copyright officer's in the room from the
Oh, good.
library, so she'll have more comments maybe than me, and we have got a section in the book on that, and Jane wrote that section. But copyright's constantly changing, and it's a real grey area at the moment. There's a whole lot of court cases going on at the moment. I think from my point of view, we need to be teaching students AI literacy. So as well as copyright, they also need to be understanding how AI works, how Gen AI works, and how the algorithm works. What's the bias involved? Why are they getting the incorrect answers in Gen AI, and how that all works. Also understanding how these systems get their data and the shortcomings of that, and also understanding if you're putting data in, what's happening to that data, and are you breaching copyright, or what private things are you putting in that then someone else can access? So I think it's almost bigger than copyright, that we have to educate sort of all these aspects, and that's what we're trying to do with this OER, but also with our other resources. Educate in general on AI literacy so that students are well informed about AI and understanding how it works. And then if they understand how it works, hopefully then they can critically evaluate the resources coming out, saying, well, why isn't this giving me any current information? Oh, that's right, that resource doesn't train on any data after 2022. I understand that. So I guess that's what we're trying to do, teach them a whole lot of things. That's the aim anyway.
Thank you. And Louise, Jane's got her hand up to comment.
Yeah, thanks, Riley. Yeah, Jane.
I just got dubbed in by everybody, so I thought I'd better answer questions. Yeah, Riley and Sam and everybody, the copyright and AI is it's more complicated than it seems. It's not just a matter of people are putting in, or that AI is trained on copyright works and is spitting out copyrighted material and breaching everybody's rights. There's transformation of it, of the work in the whole processing system. So it's whether that is actually illegal or unethical, more illegal, because is subject to interpretation of copyright law. And that gets even more complicated because Australian copyright law is more restrictive than the US copyright law. So there's a really strong argument in the US, where obviously AI has come out of, that training AI tools on copyrighted material is not a breach of copyright. When it comes to what Riley was talking about in terms of somebody uploading a PDF into a AI tool, does anybody use an EndNote library? Do you upload your EndNote documents, your articles into your EndNote library? What do you do with your EndNote library? You know, there's so many little gray areas. I would say that yes, if somebody has uploaded a PDF into an AI tool, and that AI tool explicitly says that it will incorporate that data and use it to train, that's a problem. And that gets back to Lorraine's point, that we need to teach ourselves and students to look at the terms and conditions and what you're actually agreeing to when you sign up for an AI tool. And that is basically any free tool on the internet. Nothing is free, basically. If you use a free tool on the internet, you're giving something up. So just, think about that. My concern, well, I don't think that it's really fair on AI, people that are using AI tools to say, oh no, that can't be copyrighted, because they can produce something incredibly brilliant using an AI tool. We use iterations of it all the time to generate our stuff. Who doesn't use PowerPoint, fancy gizmos and gazmos and stuff like that? So it's not a clear black and white, this is AI, this isn't AI, which gets, and you can be very creative with AI. I think somebody that spends a lot of time generating a picture with AI probably deserves copyright protection over it more than I do if I take my phone and take a photograph of my dog, as a happy snap. Why should that be copyright, but not something that somebody has spent 60 iterations getting a picture? And you can't use AI to recreate Rembrandt. You can say, generate a digital picture that looks like Rembrandt, or that is in that style. But a Rembrandt painting is sorry, Sam, I might get this completely wrong, but it's an oil painting on a canvas that is tangible and touchable. At this stage, you can't copy that. You can make a digital thing that superficially looks like it, but it's not the same.
That's perfect, Jane. Absolutely right. And it's of its time, of its place, with the resources available to them. To make it now would be a historical exercise in anachronism. I recall, if I may, sorry to segue from you and steal a paragraph from your presentation, but just on this exact note of finishing artworks left unfinished, UNESCO has made comments on these, but more accurately, there are or more pertinently, there are a number of examples of cases where an artist died before work could be finished, be it music, playwrights, or visual arts, and AI users have tried to finish the work to show us what it might look like. In the process of doing this, they strip the work itself of its humanity, the unfinished piece being the reminder of mortality and the inevitability of what we all can do with creativity. But to finish it robotically just feels demeaning and diminutive. So thank you. Back to you, Jane.
No, it all gets down to what's ethical, and that's not a copyright issue, Sam. That's a ethical. Are you producing something that is in the style of somebody else, and can you actually make anything that's as good? Probably not. I don't think. AI in itself is not creative. It's a tool, but it's more around the other ethical issues than actual. I mean, copyright is a big thing, but copyright's not going to solve the problem. And copyright, I mean, on average, you don't get rich artists and rich authors who are trying to protect their work by copyright. You get rich mega companies, and that gets me back to Buck. I would be careful, Buck, with using images of Muppets if you put them external to the CSU, because you might be breaching trademark and copyright of Disney, and you're far more likely to get into trouble doing that than generating a completely unrecognizable AI image.
Wow. On that note,
sorry,
thank
Buck,
you.
I didn't mean to dub you in there. It's just an example of what you can tell students.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jane, for your insight into all things copyright. And I think we will bring this session to a close. I'd like to thank everybody for your active participation in this session today. It certainly seems that we could have spoken about this probably for the whole of CSEdX. Just finally, I cannot share the QR code to the feedback because of my issues here, but I do invite you to share your feedback via the link that Lachlan has. There it is, kindly posted for us. And I would like to wish you a happy rest of CSEdX and a really lovely day. And I hope to see you all soon. Thank you very much.